That was Kim's logo, which, you know, she is a world-class yoga teacher. And and some of the things you do with your body, I don't know if that's possible for me. I don't think I don't know how the spine bends that way, but that's just an effect of your philosophy and your spiritual quality. So can you talk about how you actually got started in yoga and what yoga really means to you? You know, I mean,
Definitely.
it's so important for you and people. Yes.
So, Alan, first of all, always I start with love and gratitude because there is no resistance in love and gratitude, and they are the highest frequencies. But there's something super specific that I feel really grateful for that I want to express to you specifically and personally.
Okay.
That is that definitely, no question, my path of yoga has led me to the deepest aspect of what I would call the truth of who I am. And sometimes people are a little thrown off by pictures of really deep yoga postures. And they literally say, that's not yoga because it's deeper than they can imagine. But what I want to tell you is that I'm grateful because when you asked me to speak on yoga and consciousness, you asked me to show the deepest photos, recognizing that the depth of the photos was the reflection of the self-cultivation of consciousness.
Wait,
so
let me just digest that. Because you can bend your body into all these amazing positions, which we will see as an aspect of conscious intent within the pose itself, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, let me tell you this, that there are any number of possibilities that exist. Sometimes, and by the way, remember, we should start with the agreement that yoga is a state of being. Yoga is a consciousness. It's not gymnastics. And sometimes somebody can have a level of practice that is not very deep, but they are doing yoga as a state of being, as a frequency. Sometimes they can have a practice that's not very deep, but they're not really doing yoga in the way of integrating mind, body, breath, concentration, facilitating meditation, and so on. Sometimes someone can have a practice that's very deep and they're not doing yoga because it's treated a little bit more like gymnastics or contortion. And sometimes somebody can have a practice that is very, very deep and they are the embodiment of yoga. So I typically only hear two things offered. Either it's not very deep and it is yoga, or it is too deep and therefore it's no longer yoga. and I simply don't see it that way. So that actually is, again, the thing that I want to thank you for recognizing that this is all about the consciousness. And actually, I do want to, if I could just start there, I want to say that I learned early on, because I used to think that yoga was what I will call spine centric. And I, through self-cultivation, came to the realization that yoga is what I'm going to call mind centric. Mind centric. And therein lies the self-cultivation of consciousness. And so in this way, the body is a learning device for the mind. And the consciousness with which you conduct your practice is the same as the consciousness with which you conduct the life.
I just want to absorb some of those concepts. So because I think it's important, because I never heard yoga explained in those ways. So you're saying yoga is a practice for the mind, right? Is that what you?
Definitely.
Okay, and yoga is about consciousness more than about bending or twisting or whatever. It's more about the way you do it, not what you're doing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but let me also say it in another way. Okay, something that I like to say a lot. Oh, and this is perfect. It's a perfect segue into a photo that we can look at. So let me talk on it first, and then I'll share that photo. Something that I love to say is, I don't even care about these postures. And of course I do. I spent 5,000 hours cultivating these postures. But what I mean is, the body is the learning device for the mind, and it's not about the posture. Let me tell you that there are 5 aspects of the mind that you cultivate on a yoga mat. And they are self-control, determination, patience, faith, and concentration. So now I can tell you, when I say it's not about the posture is merely the tool we use to get there and the indication that we have.
Wait, slow down. What the 5 aspects? So you went through them a little fast. What is the first one?
Self-control.
Self-control, which you need to start to stretch your body. Okay, self-control, I got that. I don't have it, but I
Determination.
Determination, that's good, because you need determination to kind of move. Yeah. Okay.
Patience.
Patience, which means don't push yourself if you're not getting into the position you want to get into, right? I mean, because
it means it happens over the continuum, little by little by little by little by little.
Okay. Self-control. What was the second one?
Determination.
Determination, patience. Okay.
Faith.
Faith. Now, where does faith come into yoga?
Well, I didn't anticipate saying this, but this is what wants to be said right now. Okay. Faith comes with dismantling of the constructs of ego. A lot of people give up on things immediately, literally first try, I can't do it. And it's really fear and ego speaking, and ego being fear. So a lot of the combination of patience and faith is the knowing that the work works and you trust the process and it can't not come, and it comes millimeter by millimeter by millimeter. If only you start where you're at, do what you can, always and only with breath and with form. And you are, abiding by the pillars in your practice of pure time presence, where there is no judgment, attachment, reaction, or resistance. There's just, again, it's just all about the mind with which you practice.
Yeah, I still don't think I could ever get into those positions that you get into, but even with a lot of faith, maybe, we're all started out with the same basic hardware, right? We're all born with those same capabilities. It's where do you put your consciousness? So.
I'm glad you said that, because let me, first let's do this, but let's go to what you said, because that's important.
Wait, the 5th point. The 5th point is?
Concentration. That's what I want to talk about. But then...
what I just said.
Yeah, this is beautiful, because look if what we're talking about is consciousness, and we're about to look at all these schmancy photos of all these deep postures.
Yeah.
And if I tell you that it's not about the posture, the body is the learning device for the mind, what I can tell you now in response to what you just said about consciousness and whether or not you ever could or couldn't get into those positions is this. It has nothing to do with the postures. It has to do with the mind. And by cultivating the consciousness, you can create anything of your choosing. Like, look at the life that you've created and cultivated, the life of being a very successful producer and I'm going to call it a leader and a beacon in the spiritual community and in the spiritual sciences. So you've crafted a consciousness, and this life is what you've created with the consciousness. And so what we're talking about with me now is exactly the same thing. I've crafted a consciousness, and all these photos I'm about to show you are I want to say what I cultivated through my consciousness, self-cultivation leads to service. And that's important, because I am getting to some photos that I want to talk about, but I also want to tell you that when I first started this practice, I was really, frankly, kind of doing it for myself. I was nourished by it. I was fueled and fed by it, and I was in a perpetual state of inspiration.
But what was it in the practice that was nourishing you?
The intensity, which is my nature. It's my essence. I had the ability to be completely silent and connect to something very, very powerful inside me. So can I?
Yeah.
That story, and we already have like 3 different stories going on. So let's take this really slow.
We're going to weave them all together, so it's fine.
So exactly. So remember that in my consciousness, these these postures are what I chose to create. And I created those for myself. But after a while, I recognized how selfless it was in the creation. I was self-empowering to be able to serve others. And so in this way, the self-cultivation leads to service. So now that fifth aspect of mind, that is concentration. And I tell you, for example, that it's not about the posture. The posture is the tool you use to get there and the indication that you have. And so now let's take this posture. And this posture is called standing head to knee. It's a standing, balancing, forward compression posture. And it requires extraordinary concentration. And that, as a matter of fact, I'd say all standing balancing postures in an asana practice teach us how to concentrate.
Yes.
So as I was using this posture as a tool to learn how to concentrate, that's what I say. The posture is merely the tool we use to get there. And then being able to hit it and hold it in stillness against gravity is the indication that I had learned how to concentrate.
How do you hold that posture for? That's incredible.
Oh, you know, a minute and a half or something like that. And I can do it every which way. And, you know, with second round repeat repetitions and, you know, up on a 6-foot wall and, you know, in the middle of traffic on a bar stool and, you know, all the things you can just delight in putting your mind to the test of the ability to just stop, drop, and concentrate. And that, by the way, is, that, by the way, is learn it on your mat to use it in your life. So it's not only about concentrating when you're doing the posture in the context of a class, it's having the ability to concentrate at all times in your life. Because again, my kind of mission statement is the consciousness with which you conduct your practice is the consciousness with which you conduct the life. And then you learn it on the mat to use it in the life.
You learn on the mat, and then you use that same consciousness to create what you want in your life. So it's
if I can concentrate on my mat, I can concentrate through the life in any given moment. If I can, backbending is a huge part of my being, huge. And backbending can be a real trigger to the central nervous system. And what I tell people always is it's not actually even about bending your spine backwards. It's about connecting to calm, deep breath while you bend your spine backwards, because it is a trigger to the central nervous system. So if you
trauma in the central nervous system, then backbending will maybe release, bring up, and activate.
So it's in this way we develop what I'm going to call mastery of central nervous system through a yoga practice. So if you can have the deliberate triggers of a deep backbend in a very hot room, you know, when the muscles are working hard and the heart is beating fast and you can just stay cool like a cucumber and breathe and stay really present, then you can do it in your life out there when people get all peoply and life gets all lifey and you know, all the things get all thingy, you know, you're just calm and connected to that deep breath and cool like a cucumber. And that you can learn that on a mat. So that's why I say it's not about the posture.
Is that something you learned on the mat as you were developing your yoga practice that you then brought into the world? I mean, is that something you went through in a way, the release and the trauma and the effort? And then you're saying, oh, I can do this in life. Is that sort of how it happened for you?
I think that I would call that integration. So some people might think that the class is, you know, a 1 hour or 90-minute class, you know, in my case, in a hot room, and that's when you're doing yoga. But again, yoga is not a stretch class in a hot room. It's not gymnastics or contortion. It's a state of being. It's a frequency. It's an integration. It's an embodiment of the lessons that you cultivate by using the body as a learning device for the mind, connecting with the breath, and all of these things.
So are you saying yoga never ends when you leave the room? Your yoga practice is life itself. You can
definitely. There's nothing that is not yoga. There is nothing that is not yoga.
Right. Well, let's show that video that you showed, because that's an amazing progression. And I want to really get what you mean about, you know, working your consciousness to create the pose. I mean, I sort of get it because I did sports, I was wrestling, you know, did all that kind of stuff. But, I never, I mean, I love the body too. I think this is an incredible instrument for being the consciousness, for integrating the divine in form. And it's an honoring of creation being embodied. And I think yoga really brings that, accentuates that honoring in a sense. So yes.
Definitely. All right, let me see, because I pulled up a few videos and they all have different talking points. I'm never really showing a video saying, oh, look what I can do. I really, at this point, oh, and I want to say this, at some point in my path of self-cultivation leads to service, I had the realization that people don't care so much what I can do. What they care is what I can help them do. And when I had the realization that in fact everything I had always done in fact is now for someone else, that's when my self-cultivation converted to service. And so I'm never showing you, look what I can do. I'm always sharing myself in the form of my path, as far as what did I learn from it, and can I help you learn from it? And
to show people what you can do, because
okay.
what you can do is really incredible.
Let's do this.
Is worth noticing, because you're a master. You've mastered something that I think is valuable. I think it's
okay. Let's have a peek at this. It's a standing balancing back bend split called dancer pose. And there are some subtle nuances here. I call it lock on the line in a split with no re-grip. And I'm actually now going to go into, I'm going to call it a drop down and pull into tiger scorpion. So I'm actually going to go straight to it with my knees together, which is the deepest.
I don't know how your back actually that way. I mean, that's like a double jointed waist.
We can actually talk about that. Now here's this this one that's coming up is going to be deep. Here's this is just an entry. This is a setup for what I'm about to do. And then I'm actually going to.
You actually bend that way. That's like, you could walk around like that all day. I mean, that is a contortion, but I know that's not what you're doing. You're doing yoga.
Definitely.
But it is that's great. So
I'll show you something that requires a lot of concentration, and I do mean a lot. And it's not just the matter of developing the body, but I'm going to say that this is probably the deepest concentration I've ever known. And it's really about bandhas. As a matter of fact, the deepest of the bandhas.
What does bandhas mean?
These are energy locks in the body. And so what I'll tell you is that this this posture is called Bowlegged Mountain.
Okay.
And this is not what you would call just a knee balance by any stretch of the imagination. This is the core of your being, not just what you see in the mirror, but what you don't see in the mirror, closest to the spine, all that musculature, every single thing in and up. It's a deep, deep traction of the spine.
Okay, let's see.
And let's see, while we're on videos, I'll just show you one more that I've pulled up. Here's the one that I showed you before we started.
Yeah.
And this is a little sequence that I'm kind of known for. I see a whole lot of people inspired by this sequence. And takes a whole lot of.
You created the sequence. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not going to say that I created it. I am going to say that I'm not trying to claim ownership of anything, but this is something that I was inspired to do in a certain order, in a certain way, that has led the way for many people to try the same things in the same order or some version of.
Yeah, no, I think this is fantastic. I love watching this. I mean,
what's what I feel when I see this is the amount of strength that it takes to come out of that so slowly with control is unspeakable.
Okay, let's see it. If you can
share.
Let's
see, I gotta to stop my screen share. Where was it?
Screen share at the bottom, the green button, the screen share. Do you see
Nope,
this?
it's not there.
I didn't see any of it
All right.
yet. Just
I
talk.
lost you.
That's okay.
There we are. I got you. I got you.
Okay.
And do you have me now?
No, you haven't screen shared yet.
Oh, did you miss it?
I did. I missed all the things you were saying because
Here we are.
thought you were going to show it to us.
Sorry
And
about that. Here it is.
there we go. Okay,
Got
now
it.
the sequence you talked about.
Yes.
Okay, now
There
you're
we go.
just,
Sorry about that.
no, it's okay. Okay, that takes a lot of effort just to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're in incredible shape. I mean, I think it also.
Well, I would tell you I was inspired by participating in some, I'm going to call them yoga asana championships, demonstrations on stage of all the possibilities that exist with the combination of being strength and grace and flexibility and pure time present moment consciousness. It kept me in really a perpetual state of inspiration.
Now, what do you feel? I mean, I know it's like when I do yoga, it's exercising or it's massaging all your internal organs, but what are you feeling in your body when you are doing these things? It's someone says, is it Kundalini? I don't think it's beyond Kundalini, isn't it? Or do you feel something? What are you feeling?
I'm feeling the aspects of the mind. I'm feeling connectedness to breath. And I'm feeling a harmony of energies of strength and flexibility that bring the body into balance. I'm feeling the laws of nature. Oh, that's something to talk on. I hadn't actually written that in my notes to talk on it, but I think it's really valuable. I would say that.
Well, one thing we didn't see, I don't know if you was you saying this was the hardest pose because the one that took you close.
Oh my goodness. I thought I was screen sharing the whole time I showed that. Let me show you that.
One, because that was really, what you were saying about that was really.
Okay.
So
let's see.
You should see it on your screen when you're screen sharing. Like now you're seeing that. So
yeah, here it is.
No, yeah, let's see that one. Now, what are we looking at? I can't even.
Yeah, this is. Well, this is the one that I was referring to. I said, this is not actually just a knee balance. This is the bandhas. This is the energy locks in the body. Everything in and up with extreme concentration. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I could get my knees. I can't even picture how you actually get that started. But.
I mean, I'll tell you a tidbit about that type of posture. I'm kind of like oh gosh, I have too much flooding in at once. People look at that and they think that hurts the knees, but that is not a knee posture. The knee happens to be the hinge joint, but that's way more about the hips than it is about the knees. And the stretch begins all the way from T12, L1, 2, 3, 4, 5, through, so the psoas, through the hip flexors, through the quads, through the knees, through the shins, through the ankles and the feet, and the stretch is distributed across the entire lower aspect of the body. And if done properly, see, I'm in a really privileged position of being able to say it's actually no big deal. It's only a big deal until it's not, it's only hard until it's not. And that's another aspect of the mind, because when you know that in your tissues through an asana practice, then you know it in your life. This might be hard, but it's only hard until it's not.
Right. And that's a good thing to remember, like you're saying, in your life. It's only hard until it's not hard, but still it takes hours and hours of practice and concentration. But okay, you can do that, but what for? Not to, belittle it, but it's like the story of Buddha and one of his disciples who said, I want to levitate across the river, and he spends 20 years doing that and finally can do it. And Buddha says, well, you spent all that time, but you could have paid the ferryman 5 cents to get across the river or something like that. So, I mean, like you spent all that time and focus doing it for the cultivation of the mind is what you're saying, really, right?
100%.
Okay.
What I think that I would answer your question this way.
Yeah.
What I learned in consciousness by using the body as a learning device for the mind, and then being able to offer that in service, is otherworldly. The experience, by the way, of being in that position and feeling connected to your breath and your strength is extraordinary. I can barely think of anything that could make me feel more alive and connected to my strength and more authentic to my truth and more an expression of myself than that.
I
And
think when you say strength, though, I think you mean something different and something much deeper than most people talk about strength. Describe what you mean about the core strength.
I love what you said, but the answer is all the levels. The strength of the body, because look at, you can have strength without rigidity, and you can have flexibility without instability if you use your strength to create space in the body and then express range of motion into the space you've created. So I do believe that the body that is in balance, that is really strong and healthy, is as strong as it is flexible and as flexible as it is strong. And they both increase together. But yes, it's a full-on third chakra situation where you're connected to your
strength, the third chakra. You're feeling the strength in the third chakra, as you're saying?
Definitely. Solar plexus chakra is all about connectedness to your strength, to your power, and the ability to manifest. I'm going to call it your eternal.
Your muscle, like most people feel their strength like in their lifting ability. That's not what you're talking about, right?
I am talking about that and more.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about the core of your being.
The core.
I'm talking about your connection to your eternal life force before this life and after. It is no joke.
No, I get that, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, because I think that's really important. That understanding your connection to your eternal life force. That's like the key of what you've learned through all those hours of practicing yoga. And does that eternal life force go beyond the body? Because you're feeling it in the body, but where does it extend beyond the body?
Of course. I want to say that a minute ago when you asked me, like, how does it nourish you? I think that this was a better answer. I think the answers are kind of snowballing. And tell me what you just said, because
I said you feel it in your body as strength. Beyond the body, how do you feel that strength? Is it possible to feel it beyond the body?
I think the progression for me is something like this. And let me just think it out loud, and then, explain it if it wants to be explained. From going from being nobody to somebody to nobody to everybody.
Right.
And by the way, not just everybody, but all things, all life, tethered between the core and the cosmos, connected to the planet and all living beings that inhabit the space with you, and also open to receiving from the collective and in service to all. I've gotten all of that from a yoga practice.
No, but is that because you are so embodied, you're so in touch with every little aspect that you need to be in touch with in order to move and breathe and focus? Is like when you get in touch with the very core of your cells and bones and muscles, you become everything. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yoga means yoking and union, right? And I see myself in everybody. And I hope that everybody sees an aspect of themselves in me. I tell a lot of stories in my events so that no matter who they are, they know that I am them. And I will tell you that sometimes people look at all these postures and they think that, I'm always happy and this is very easy and life is always perfect. And in fact, I share a lot of my struggles with a lot of honesty and vulnerability, so that people go, oh.
You don't have to share them, but like what struggles would you share if you want to share them? I also want to say before you say that, it's someone in the chat says it's rare to see anyone so grounded. So that's, But do you want, like, when you say you share your struggles, you don't have to share them if you don't want. I'm curious, like, why and and the story of yoga in those struggles. Can you share
Well,
some?
definitely. And if you want the story and if we have time for it, I will share it. And
Yeah.
if you don't want the time, I'll just reference it.
No, we have time. We have as much
Okay,
time as
good.
we want.
Okay, good. This is all of my stories are true. Really, really true.
I wasn't going to doubt that. If you're telling me the story, I
And
believe you're making it up. Yeah.
I also want to tell you that the stories that I tell about me are never about me. The stories that I tell about me are for the benefit of all.
Okay. Good.
And the first story that I start with is a simple story that I call the story of forgiveness. And the subject of the object, subject or object of the forgiveness was my mother. So I grew up with a lot, I tend to go lot of adversity. And I had, as a child in the midst of a lot of adversity, I grew into a young woman that had a lot of anger at my mother, for sure. I felt like she made choices that not only were not in my best interest, but they were to my detriment, for sure. And she ended up actually being kind of struggling with alcohol and the downward spiral, just as low can be. And then she ended up passing away. And I was left feeling angry about it. And I was at this time in my life where my friend had told me that I should take up a practice of yoga. And these two energies in me were converging just in the right synchronicity.
You mean the anger and the yoga practice, they were
The
converted.
anger, and actually, maybe there's something I should insert. And I'm gonna just give a shout out to Oprah Winfrey.
I love her. I think she's amazing. Yes.
Well, when you talk to her, you tell her that I tell this story in my seminars all the time.
I want you on her show. So, okay.
That is a yes right there. So listen, hearing the right words in the right moment. So I was at this place where I was really angry at my mother, and I turn on the Oprah Winfrey show, and Oprah Winfrey literally says, and I like to embellish the story, and she says, Kim, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, and not because the person necessarily deserves the forgiveness, but because you deserve the relief from the burden that you carry.
Well, actually, a video of where Oprah, like, talking about how angry she was at her mother. I think we're all angry at her mother. Actually,
It might or might not be fair to say that that my daughter might get mad at me every now and then. But here's the thing. I was at this time in my life where I was angry at my mother. And Oprah Winfrey said the right words in the right moment. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be liberated. And I went, oh my God. Yes, that's why I need to forgive. But now listen, this is important. This starts to get very important. I know why I should forgive, but I don't know how. And then I stepped into a yoga room. And I was just as a side note, I was a marathon runner at that time.
Already athletic in that sense, very in touch with you.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, it turned out that marathon running was my kind of precursory meditation, because I was just pounding the pavement, connected to the breath with the rhythm and the concentration and the determination of 26 miles. And anyway, I got into this yoga room and I was practicing just only maybe a month or two, and I was not really, let me just say, I was an ambitious student. I was very hardworking, but I wasn't necessarily born that way, naturally flexible, walked in with it. It wasn't like that. I was just above average or average in my body, but really working hard at this. And I was doing this posture called Camel Pose, which is the deepest back bend in a class, in that class. And remember, I was at this place where I was ready to forgive, but I didn't know how. And of course, when you're in a back bend like that, your solar plexus and heart chakra are wide open. So the combination of being ready to forgive, but not knowing how, and then just opening my body and breathing into it. I started crying in that back bend. And I didn't throw myself off. I didn't like suck it in and say, why am I crying? Nor did I become demonstrative or ask for attention. I just recognized it as something. And I turned around, lied down on my back, and I let it go just quietly. I just cried. And then when the crying was over, I resumed the class. And when I walked out that day, literally, I knew that I had forgiven. More than knowing that I had forgiven, I knew how to know that I had forgiven. And that is what I love to share.
Good to share about how you know.
Uh-huh.
Yes, yes.
Because now, hear me now, remember my mother had passed. She died. And, you know, for example, if I was mad at you, which I never have been and I never will be.
We don't know each other that long, so who knows?
If I was mad at you and you walked into the room, I would like feel a little tension and feel a little resistance. But you know, if I wasn't, you would walk in and it would just be pure, clear, clean energy, and we would know. But when somebody can't walk into the room because they've passed, how do you know? Here's how. Up until literally that moment, in that class, with that back bend, with that crying and that release of everything being open, I was very, very much attached to my story, the story of my life, all of the offenses that I had kept track of. And I had this level of intensity where I felt like you don't know me unless you know what I've been through. And I would actually make you listen to all the details. And they even started before I was born.
I'm sure what a victim consciousness has.
Yeah. Yeah. And this part is really important. The realization that I had in that moment is that all those stories I used to tell weren't even about me.
Oh, really? Who were they about?
They were her stories.
Your mother's stories.
Children are developmentally narcissistic by nature, and they think that everything that happens around them happens to them. And my first realization is that the stories that I was telling were not really even my own to tell. And then came the immaculate realization, oh my God, she struggled, she suffered horrifically. And my natural response then was compassion. And
that was when you know you have forgiveness, when you have compassion for
well, so far we have two parts. One is I'm no longer attached to the story that I used to tell of all of the hurts, all of the offenses I had kept track of, but also then the compassion for her. And then the realization that I am empowered to write my own story and that I don't choose to write hers any longer. As a matter of fact, that's her story, not mine. And if you knew me, that is not what I would want you to think of me anyway, right? To know about me, that's not about me.
You wouldn't want us to think that of you because you've worked through that level of consciousness where you were suffering, because you were suffering. So you wanted everyone to know how much you suffered. And that's why people commiserate.
Yeah.
I think the yoga, you're saying, freed you because it was also talk about those somatic imprinting in the body of trauma and memory. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are so many talking points from here. I mean, the real question is which direction to go in. Now, in that moment, I knew with all certainty that I was onto something with this yoga stuff. You know, I went in there thinking it was, you know, yes, it's a stretch class in a hot room and I'm a marathon runner and supple muscles are far less prone to injury. And so it would be good for me, but I got to get my cardio, you know. But when I had that realization, a fire was lit within me and I started reading everything I could get my hands on, and not just within my lineage, but within all lineages, and not just within asana, but all 8 limbs of yoga. And I met myself and I knew it when I knew it.
Well, when did you meet yourself? What was the moment of meeting yourself? Is that a moment?
The moment was, I would say that's, remember again, when you asked me, what was it that nourished me? I found a combination of things. I found freedom. And you know what I found freedom to do? To express my depth. Can I talk about another story that I learned in yoga?
As long as you don't identify with it. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke.
Okay. Okay. Here's something else that I learned in that moment, in that space of that time, is that so as a child and growing up, and probably even to this minute, I hear people say things about me, and what they say most commonly is, she's so intense. She's so intense. Oh my God, she's so intense. But they always say it with this tone of voice as if like there's something wrong with me.
I haven't heard anyone say that except you. So, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So the thing is that intense can be misinterpreted for sure. But since it was said with a certain tone of voice, I always thought there was something wrong with me. I thought, God, nobody can handle me. What's wrong with me, right? I was, I'm what I in hindsight now can say, I was literally rejecting the truth of who I am for my very essence and my very nature.
You were rejecting your own intensity, you're saying.
I was thinking that the essence of who I am, without having to try to be that way, when I am when I'm in the most comfortable space in my being, which happens to be intensity, I was rejecting that aspect of myself as something that other people, rejected me for. They were rejecting me for the truth of who I am.
I'm not sure what you mean by intense. I mean, I think you're present. I think you're enthusiastic. I think you're passionate. What do you mean by intense, or what do you think people mean?
I'll show you while we talk on the subject. I would say that, let me find there is one specifically that I'm looking for, and I thought that I had a video of it.
Stuff is intense. That's what I would say.
How about, see, I wanted to do like a bow-legged full cobra or something like that. This is intense. Yeah, this is intense. See, I was pounding the pavement running these marathons because they allowed me to tap into my intensity, and they allowed me to tap into my determination. They allowed me to tap into aspects of myself that make me feel expressed and alive. And what I'll tell you is that running didn't even begin to tap into, to allow me to access the type of intensity that I was allowed to tap into. Oh, let me screen share again.
Yoga gave you a lot more depth of intensity. Is that what you're saying? Depth.
Yes.
Yeah. Deep will take you. Someone asked, how old were you when you walked into that yoga class?
36.
You were 36 when you started?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. Hey, I told you now look at, and that, maybe I should speak on that for a second. Something that I will say is maybe a little, oh, by the way, that picture right there, that's intense. It's definitely intense.
I don't know how to do that, but I mean, how do you actually even turn your legs and body in those positions? I mean,
okay, now listen, I have too much coming in at once, so let me try to get some of this out. I want to tell you that I was able to go so much deeper in yoga than I was able to go in running marathons per se, because I was going inside to the depths of my being, which is where my intensity lies. And it makes me feel alive, and it makes me feel fully expressed, and it makes me feel energized. So what I'm guided by here is that as being nourishment. And before we, I'm so sorry, Alan, 1 second, before we leave that talking point, because I want to really complete that train of thought, is that what I learned through the yoga practice about what I called my essence, because remember I said that people would always say she's so intense, and I rejected myself for that because I thought that I was being rejected for it. And what I learned by looking in the mirror in my own eyes in the form of concentration and depth and intensity is that for all of us, remember my stories aren't about me, this is for all of us. My nature, which happens to be depth and intensity, is my strength. It's why I've been able to do what I've done. By the way, taking my very first yoga class at the age of 36, by the way, when I wasn't born naturally flexible, didn't walk in with it, wasn't a prima ballerina. I already had 3 children, and I was only an average student with a big life, a big responsibilities. I had all the excuses to not to be able to do everything that I've done. And I chose not to use those excuses. Why? Because I felt alive and connected more than I ever had in my entire life when I found that practice.
That is great. No, I love, and thank you for saying that and finishing that point, because it's, I just want to integrate some of that, because when you say you go into the depth in that practice where you're sort of folded up like in a little box there, how can you the talking point, let's call it that, about the depth of finding your being in the depth of the body itself? Can you bring those two together? Because I don't quite get those two, because most people meditate and sort of lose their body in that sense. But you're finding yourself in the depth of the body and the depth of being in body. So yeah, make that connection for me if you can.
I think I want to answer this way. Yeah. And it seems like a roundabout way, but it's what I want to say about it. I teach according to what I call the laws of nature, and I've learned to listen to gravity as my best teacher. And I teach that way. And of course, for every single action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so there's this quote that I always talk about in my teaching, and then I apply it every chance I can. In opposing forces, there is tension. And in equal and opposite tension, there's balance. In balance, there is stillness. In stillness, there is silence. And in silence, there is space. Space is the goal. Space between thoughts, space in your bone joints, space in your life for expansion and flow. And that is a direct correlation, most certainly, with breath as well. And so kind of the integration of deep, intense inner space, breath, balance in the body, synchronization of all of those aspects of our being. Because remember, of course, and this is something that I delight in telling everyone that I teach, and that is that anyone can tell you to, suck your stomach in and point your toes harder, but I am not that. I consider my events more like an energetic event, and I will most certainly teach you in every aspect of your being. So I always will be speaking to you, because I will tell you with all certainty, I will be speaking to you on the level of thoughts and beliefs, feelings and emotions, which, by the way, are typically in response to the thoughts and beliefs, and then the level of form through which it expresses. So this is also something that I gained in cultivating that yoga practice, is the awareness of myself on every level of being, because how much of what I've done has taught me to remove what I call, oh God, that's so important, what I call thought obstruction. Because, and you know what I've learned in the cultivation of the mind is that I call it, neuroplasticity. Send the command from the brain through the mind without the thought obstruction. And basically you lay down that line of communication. This is something you and I have talked about before. You have, my favorite number, my favorite scientist says 100 trillion. So I go with that. 100 trillion cells in your being, and every single one of them is under the command of your consciousness. But you have to know how to use your consciousness to organize and line up those cells in that order. And in that way, you are in creation in your yoga practice.
That's Joe Dispenza, right? Who says that?
Yeah. And it comes with knowing how to, learning. There's something I've definitely learned, how to use your mind as your friend. And the way that I like to describe it is this: in the way of asana, sometimes your body really wants to do what I'm going to call hard work, but your mind doesn't. Sometimes your mind really wants to do hard work, but your body doesn't. Sometimes both your body and your mind want it. That's a good day. And sometimes neither your body nor your mind want it. That's a well-timed day off. And I know how to work within the parameters of my mind wants it, but the body doesn't. The body wants it, but the mind doesn't. You know, no 2 days are alike. So these are actually, I try to teach these, what I'm going to call modifications of the mind in the way of working with yourself. And remember now that we're not just talking about a yoga practice. It's that, again, learn it on the mat to use it in the life. And by the way, this, I cannot not say this. This is important. And believe me, I am in deep reverence and respect for etiquette, tradition, and all of these things. And I understand and respect the value of etiquette and tradition in laying down foundational strength and rules. But at some point, you learn the rules to transcend the rules. And many teachers teach with an approach of either you have to do this, you have to do this, or you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to, you can't. You have to, you can't. And
That's not teach at all, is it? Because you're
something unique about me is that I let that go. I got in my own room, in my own space. I owned a studio, and I got into what I call creation, and with a very different consciousness and a very different mindset that I would call, how can I? How can I? How can I? And again, I kind of teach it that way as well. A bit. I used to just like lie my body down at night. I was so inspired that I would just visualize, how can I do this? What do I want to do? How can I do it? What do I want to do? How can I? I couldn't wait to get into the
platform, wasn't it? You used your body as an art form to create and manifest mind in a way.
To learn, create, and share. Learn, create, and share. Yeah, nourish the seed, nourish the seed, nourish the seed. I was so busy nourishing the seed, I never even gave actually any realization of fruit that might come. The nourishment of the seed is the fruit for me. That's what kept me so inspired.
That's the fruit of that as well,
Yeah.
But let me ask you, when you put yourself in that last pose we saw, do you visualize the pose itself first? Is this how you use the mind? So do you want to show that pose? Because I want to just
absolutely. Was it this one?
I think where you're looked like you're in like a little box. Now screen share. Yeah, that one. Do you visualize yourself first getting there, or does it come about organically as you move through whatever you need to do to get there?
Well, look, there are an infinite number of possibilities when it comes to asana. And let me tell you this, as far as I'm concerned, I have probably 4,000 pictures of postures on my Facebook, but there are only 5 poses there. And I kind of laugh. I'm like, geez, I really need some new pictures, because there are really only 5 poses there. And the reason that I say that is because there are only 5 ranges of motion of the spine. And then there are just variations that exist within those 5 ranges of motion. So this is a back bend, but it happens to be a back bend in bow leg with a shoulder rotation. So this posture is extremely deep, because this involves quite literally every single bone joint at its maximum all at once. But what I want to show you is, watch this, kind of commit this to memory.
Okay.
Look at the configuration from my head through my spine, through my knees.
Right.
So now watch something like this. And I'm seeing now that I have to screen share within each photo. I think that's what went wrong before. Watch this. Oh, not that one. No, not that one.
Okay. No, we don't see that yet, but
okay. Let's see. It was.
It's just the screen.
This one. And am I screen sharing? Yeah, you got it?
I get it. Got it. Okay, so you are.
Okay, now watch this. Right.
Hang
on 1 second.
Okay. Yes.
Right there.
Yes. What do you say?
That's the same thing. It's just that in the picture I showed you a second ago, my knees were bent with my feet hooked under my hips, and then my elbows were bent, grabbing my knees with my shoulders in full rotation. So, I have to tell you, when you understand something really well, you can explain it very simply. And so now commit that to memory. See how my arms and legs are straight?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
But now, again, you look at, let me make sure I'm screen sharing. There we
But
are.
I love your philosophy of that because you're going beyond the body into the mind there. You're going,
Sure.
yeah, go ahead.
And so this is the same thing. It's just that the elbows are bent with a knee grab and the legs in bow-legged, which makes it much, 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 much deeper. But it's, you know, the thing is that I'll tell you that I want to say that these unlimited, infinite possibilities just present themselves when you're ready to hear them. I had everything I needed. That's what I was going to say. I do want to say something unique about my practice as well is that sometimes you have somebody who's quite deep in their spine, but their hips are tight. And by the way, that's a bad combination. Or sometimes somebody's lower back is very flexible, but not the upper back. Or they're good at handstands, but they're not flexible. But something about my practice is that I did actually everything. I opened virtually every space in every joint space in my body, neck, upper back, middle back, lower back.
I want to really integrate to me. So you were able, like most people don't even know when they're tight or they have, so you've gone into every single joint, muscle, tendon. You felt every single core of your body. And in a way you've owned the physical, you're in that grounds, that does something to consciousness where you are so embodied, right? Because yoga is not about leaving the body, it's about embodiment. So how did that pay off for you in the world when you found yourself in this form? And then the other question I asked before, how does that go beyond the body then?
There's so many talking points. I'm just trying to pick which one to stop on. I want to tell you that something that I taught, the way that it benefits the world is that is now my service, to show people not necessarily how to do postures, but definitely how to do postures, but more importantly, how the posture, what I learned from it and how it's not about the posture. It's a tool you use to get there. The indication that you have, it's a learning device for the mind. Something that I benefited from extraordinarily is what I would call a higher level of, now, because hear me now, when I say a higher level of practice, I don't actually mean deeper. Here's what I mean: more inner awareness, more knowing in your tissues. Doing is knowing, the rest is just information. So in a high level of practice, you will have the ability to quite literally, I'm going to call it, single out the pieces and command them independently. And yes, the realization of being able to single out this muscle, but not this one. Contract this one, but relax this one. Being able to single out the pieces and command them independently, to be able to just have that domain of every fiber of every centimeter of your being is embodiment. It is integration. It is activation. Breathing into it, living in it fully.
Mind, because it's also mind. I interrupt, but it's mind because you're putting your mind in those spaces in your body. So it's like you're using your mind to fill out your body in that sense, right? I mean,
definitely. I love what you said.
So the other part of that question was, the energy you're feeling as your core energy, is it beyond the body? I mean,
Definitely.
Talk about that.
Well, I believe that we live in this, dynamic, fluid-filled matrix of consciousness. And so now we get into the bigger conversations.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that you can only give what you have. And so to self-cultivate is the way that you, let's draw upon some spiritual teachings in this. Let's call it giving and receiving are one and the same. And let's talk about it in the way of embodiment. And now we are talking about what I'm going to call the knowing in the tissues, right? The knowing that I have in my tissues is embodiment. And the more that I give from the knowing in my tissues, the more I am the embodiment of what I'm giving. And the more embodied I am, the more I can give. The more embodied I am, the more I can give.
Knowing in the tissues, can you describe what you actually mean by that?
What I mean by that is literally muscle tissues. As a matter of fact, not limited to muscle, tendon tissues, ligament tissues, joint tissues, bone tissues, organ tissues, gland tissues, lung tissues, breath tissues, chakra tissues, all the tissues on all the levels. If I know myself there, then I can support you in knowing yourself there. If we were talking about something as simple as a posture, I would tell you this: if I was limiting the conversation to just the physical dimension of being, I would say that the way that I teach, there's a lot here, is to tell you exactly what position to be in according to the laws of equilibrium, exactly what to contract, exactly what to relax, exactly how to breathe, exactly what goes wrong, how to either prevent it or correct it. And I try to help you find a feeling. Because listen, when it comes to teaching, I can appeal to your intellect and you can go, oh, I get it, but you don't get it until you feel it. And when you feel it, then you know it. And that's when I know I've taught you. So I'm always going for trying to teach you a feeling, trying to help you find a feeling, because if you can find it and feel it, then you can reproduce it. And that is when I've transferred knowing in my tissues to knowing in your tissues. And now it's yours, right?
Right. No, that's what a great teacher does. You're transferring the feeling. Like someone told me, you can't teach someone to ride a bicycle unless you've ridden a bicycle yourself.
And there it is again, doing is knowing, the rest is just information. And when you know it as a state of being, not just a concept or philosophy, you know it, you feel it, you can express it, impart it, and all the things. And so, yeah,
So
definitely.
unified mind and body in a sense, because when you put your mind to a muscle or a joint, you actually are that and you have control over that in a sense, right? So you're sort of one with the life force in the body and the mind that's with the body. That's yoga, right? That's the true definition in a sense, right? Is that what you're saying?
Definitely.
Okay.
What you speak on makes me want to draw in neuroplasticity. I want
Yeah.
to tell you that, let me show you some bow-legged postures and let me talk about neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. Let me see here. You've already seen some of them.
Mhm.
So I'll just go through a few.
But those really
Uh,
nice photos you have too, those, oh yeah. How is, are you actually, that's probably the most impressive thing I see during the whole interview. How is that even possible? I mean,
yeah,
that,
well, see, this is why I call it creation. Oops, when you begin something, and I want to tell you something else that's a little unique about me is that I am my own teacher. You know who taught me to do that? Gravity. And I used to think I was channeling a guru. And then I realized it was just a formula of tuning in. It was deep, deep attunement.
mm,
What I want to tell you is that when I started doing this, and by the way, I commonly get a question, why are you wearing a wristband?
yeah.
And the wrist is a small bone joint, and in this case, load bearing. And I was quite literally on that particular day doing 10 sets of 30-second holds. So that is still like a statue for 30 seconds at a time, doing 10 sets of that. And when I first started that, believe you me, it seemed like a foreign language. It seemed like there was no way, no how this would ever happen. I couldn't get the bow-legged hook. I couldn't get the one arm balance. But what I did is, again, what I talk about and teach is just send the command from the brain through the spine without the thought obstruction, and
Yeah.
know that you're doing what you need to do to get to where you need to be, and you're gathering information and you're assimilating and processing the information in the form of, okay, am I in the right position? And am I open where I need to be? And am I contracted in opposing forces where I need to be? Am I breathing? Am I concentrating? And now finally, what is the order of commands that needs to transpire in order for this to come together?
Yeah.
Because if I either am missing some commands in my mind, or I'm including extraneous information that I don't need, or I have those commands in the wrong order, then things are going to be a little off. And when you don't yet have mastery of a posture, I feel that it's because you still have some questions about it. So it's really a journey to discover what questions do I still have that are unanswered.
Well,
And sometimes the answer comes, or sometimes the question disappeared, and then you have the posture.
you do that with both hands, or is one hand stronger than the other?
Oh, yes. Yes, both hands. Yeah,
You
both
do
hands.
both hands, but not
Yeah.
at the same. No.
Well, yes, certainly you can do them at the same time. Oops, didn't mean to go to the same posture. Hang on one second.
So that's. Did you did create that posture? Did you see that anywhere? You just.
No, it is a posture that already exists, but to my knowledge, there were only maybe 2 or 3 people in America that could do it. Let's see. Here we
It's
are.
actually beautiful as well as just impossible.
Yeah. Now, let me show you. Can I just flip through just some fun things?
Please, because I think people do. No, can you make that bigger? Yeah.
So
Because it's like you're creating with the body in a way I've never seen anyone do before. So
yeah, I have a unique language, and part of my practice and teaching and knowing is that what matters is not just getting in the position, but what the work that you do once you're in that position. That's where the magic happens.
what do you
And
mean?
so
What you do in that position? Like,
I call it the leverages. And so in this picture, what you would be able to see energetically if I said it out loud is that I'm actually pulling up on my ankles to pull down with my head, basically. So I'm pulling up to pull down. There's some opposing forces there.
up on your ankles and you're pushing your head down.
Yeah, there's like see if you can kind of get the feeling of like this.
I don't think I can even touch my ankles. But yeah.
It's something like that. So I really teach with some magic of understanding what I call the leverages. Let me see if I can.
While you're in position, you're actually still working the position. Is that what you're saying? It's not static.
I'm going to say on the one hand, yes. And on the other hand here, there's no work going on here. That's for sure. That's a meditation right there.
I want to take a little screenshot of that. That is that peaceful as it looks? Because it
Definitely
is a beautiful, transcendent posture there.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's a great picture too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I gave myself a lot of permissions in my practice. I started talking to you about the consciousness of just how can I? And this one just delights me.
Yeah, that's
just pure hanging out kind of fun, but in that deep, intense, essence of my being.
how you watch television or look at the computer. No.
Yeah, sure. Let's see.
They are just I mean, as you do it, your body just probably loves it, right? Because you're stretching every part of it.
My body, my heart, my mind, my spine, my soul, every aspect of my being on all of the levels that I love it deeply and completely. I call it like greatest pleasure and deepest joy. And now I actually get the same level of joy by supporting other people in being able to, I call it supporting them in their expansion. So now let's go back again. Let's go back again to our starting talking point.
Sure.
And I told you that, it's all about cultivating the consciousness. And I told you, this is what I used my consciousness to cultivate, but you might take the same consciousness that you cultivate on a mat and use it in your life to express art, to express business, to express writing or any sport or anything that is your passion. It comes from the consciousness. So I used mine for this. You use yours differently, but it comes from the same consciousness.
It does. It does. Thank you for recognizing that in everyone. But you've mastered something. I mean, you really have. And that's why I like talking to people who have mastered an art form or a way of being, because they're inspiring for other people to master what they're here to do. So
I really want to thank you for using the word master exactly when you did, because there are some people in my life that are near and dear to me as a result of that level of practice. And that happens to be one of them right there, one of many. And so the shared experience of, shared practice, and especially when you're both, when you both understand that level of depth, and for example, in this picture, when I am in that space and, he is in that space and we are in that space, we are one in that space of understanding each other with that comfort, with that depth, and, all of those levels.
Together in those kind of stretches, you feel connected in the oneness of the stretching. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely. It's an extraordinary kind of bond.
I really, because you're in it together. That's amazing. But, if I was in it, wait, I love that picture. I was just going to say,
should I go back? Okay.
Yeah. Because if I was a extraterrestrial and came to Earth and saw people in those poses, I would have a whole different understanding of what earthlings were about. You know, if I just came and saw people like that, I would have a, yeah, totally different experience of humans. And no, thank you for that. But that's fun. That's really fun. But like I said, how do you take energy that you felt at the core and realize that it's also beyond the body? How do you go? Let's go to that. Well, I like this picture too. That's fun. It's like Joshua Tree or someplace, right?
It is Joshua Tree. Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yes, I love the rocks. Yeah, they're all amazing. I mean, that's just like you relaxing, hanging out, and but no, how do you take it beyond the? How do you know that you're the energy beyond the body? Is what I'm asking.
Let's go back to the talking points and we'll scoop them back up and push them into this moment. So I say that the body is a learning device for the mind, and that you're there to cultivate the aspects of the mind of self-control, determination, patience, faith, and concentration. So you learn that on the mat to use it in the life, and that is the embodiment. And the cultivation of self leads to service. And so when you are embodiment, then you can give from that place of knowing, and knowing how to work, by the way, knowing how to work with the mind as the friend, knowing how to send the command from the brain throughout this, through the spine without the thought obstruction. And like all of these things come together in the form of this rich experience that you've had, that you can now share from a place of being, not just doing and not just knowing, but being. You can literally be a frequency that others can attune themselves to.
Oh, so you become the frequency, and then are you always, you find like the core of you, the spirit of you, talk about that as a frequency. Like, what is that?
Well, I do, you know, I always love to give my personal disclaimer. I don't require that anyone agree with me or believe what I believe, but I share myself freely in the form of my beliefs freely. And I support others in the same way. I have cultivated all 8 limbs of yoga, not just asana. So although the subject of today's conversation is postures, and they're really fun, and that is the way that I came through a practice, and it is as full-bodied as the other 7 limbs. But I will tell you, there are 7 other limbs. And some of them are the niyamas. The 4th niyama is self-study and spiritual study. And I do believe that we are vibrational beings in a vibrational world. And I do believe that everything we see is what I'm going to call the indication of what's active within us in the form of our relationship with ourselves in the context of our lives. I believe that we have precognitive agreements, and we came here to learn something. And then the lesson was introduced to us along with thought identification, right? So the level of us that is a body in and of itself, thoughts and beliefs, egoic identification of self as separate, and how we actually take who we think we are and project it into the world to create what we see. So I will say that the answer to your question is bigger than how did, and by the way, what I learned through that asana practice is like mind-blowing, otherworldly. And I share everything that I learned with the body as a learning device for the mind, and the connection to central nervous system. And I learned all of that, and I share it freely in the ways that we've already discussed. But there are 7 other limbs, and those involve things like self-study, spiritual study, devotion, acts of service. And I've cultivated those as equally and share them as well. And so I am embodiment on levels that do go beyond only the limb of asana or pranayama as in a practice.
Well, I mean, before I wanted to move on to the bigger picture, but how important is breath? Because you haven't really talked about breath, but you say it is, talk about the importance of breath in the practice.
I'm going to say breath is more important than any of those postures. As a matter of fact, the postures are, and because, you know, it's common for people to say, oh no, you know, breath is a bridge between mind and the body, and breath is the key. But that is no joke right there. These postures are literally put your body in this position, breathe there. Put your body in this position, breathe there. And by the way, it's not just put your body in this position, it's breathe your way into this position and breathe into your body in that position. Breathe your way into this position and breathe into your body in this position. And especially, so, you know, I've done a little bit of backbending in my time. And when people ask me to teach them backbending, and I think this might be the second time I'm saying it now, it's really able to be heard and felt. It's not about, let me say the whole thing. Yeah. It's not about bending your spine backwards. It's about relaxing and connecting to calm, deep breath while you bend your spine backwards. Because if you can breathe there, you can calm down there. And if you can calm down there, you can spend time there. And if you can spend time there, you can do some work there. You can get to know yourself in that position. And I call it, you can get to love your life in that position. And so what I want to tell you is most people, and remember, I'm not just talking about the mat, I'm talking about the mat and the life, because the consciousness with which you conduct the practice is the same as the consciousness with which you conduct your life. Learn it on the mat to use it in the life. A lot of people get their central nervous system a little triggered by a backbend posture, by a hot yoga class, and they freak and they can't wait to get out of there. And that's the same way they react in the life. You get a little trigger with the central nervous system, you freak, you can't wait to get out of there. You can't think clearly, you go into fight or flight, you start losing the breath.
Relationship, right? You know, all
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So breath is everything, because you simply cannot and will not ever be able to do the work to get into those positions. Remember the one where you said, that's like meditative. Yeah. And are you relaxed there? I'm like, absolutely. That's breath.
That's good. No, I love everything you're saying. And we're good. We can keep talking, but I want to look at the bigger picture, because do you have time a little bit more?
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Although it's starting to rain out here on East.
Oh, wow.
But that's fine. I've disconnected the computer. But so let's take it to the bigger situation we find ourselves in. Let's do the yoga of like the crisis we're in, and the world in trauma, and the world not knowing how to bend backwards in a sense, and move forward and breathe into a new state mind. How do you apply everything you've learned to the bigger picture now?
I want to say that I feel a little bit equipped to be in service to humanity, quite literally. That's a big statement. I know it. I don't say it with ego. I say it the opposite, with no ego.
I love it that you can own that part, because you are equipped. You've done a lot of time to get to the position you're in, and that's something to be honored. It's not ego to say, look what you've accomplished. I think that's a great thing. So you can,
I mean, if I could maybe try to summarize it in some one-liners of how I could make a straight shot from a practice to service to humanity, and especially right now when things are a little funky out there, right? It's that I've learned to, when I'm triggered, to stay connected to calm, deep breath, and to stay deeply rooted and grounded. I would call that contracted. So the ability to contract what you need to stay grounded and connected and relax everything else, to, the pillars of non-judgment. It's everything. Non-reaction, non-attachment, non-resistance. That's everything right there. I learned that on a mat. I use that in my spiritual counsel. The realization that we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. To be able to just dismantle the constructs made in fear and realize that most of it is projection, and most of it is fear-based, and to actually be a frequency of calm, connected, love, groundedness, and all of these things for others, to attune themselves to, and so that, and in a way to give them permission to be the same. Like, it is the embodiment, it is the integration, it is the be the change you wish to see in the world, without a doubt.
It's great. No, I get all that. That's great. So, and because you're so sensitive to energy, because you feel everything, I'm assuming that that's happening in your body, because you've attuned your mind to every little part of your body. Are you feeling something now happening energetically on the earth that is coming through your body? Talk about that. Yes.
I definitely am. And we all see it. And I again, I'm always looking for union and sameness. And what I will tell you is that I see that right now we as a planet, not just a nation, are in the midst of a shift that we are ready for. We are ready to dismantle constructs made in fear. And so it's up to each of us to be the embodiment of the change that we wish to bring forth into what we could call a new world, to stop expecting it to be what it was and to create what it will be. That's actually something that I live by, is what matters is not what happens, but how you respond to what happens, and it will be what you make it, and you do get to choose. And so it's your responsibility to be accountable for your creations right now, right now, right now, right now, and right now. And so to have that level of connectedness with exactly where you're at in pure time, which by the way is learned in postures, is one way for sure.
So what do you sense? So you're saying that we can relax into this movement that's happening now. And, but what do you think is coming? What's your intuition?
I think what's coming is the dismantling of constructs made in fear. I think that there has been an equation that was the Maya, the illusion of the relationship between time, which is a man-made construct, and money, which is a man-made construct, and the value of a human with respect to time and money. And all of these constructs are being dismantled. And so I am accountable to creating the emergence of the value of all human beings as being love, as being perfect by virtue of their divine birthright. They always have been, are now, always will be. And to help people come into that collective consciousness, to be more accountable for our collective agreements, and to let go of the agreements made in fear, and the things of that nature.
No, I think it's great because it seems like your yoga practice is about love. It's about loving the embodiment. It's about loving. I mean, this is what I'm learning from what you're saying. Every step of the way, every step of the practice is putting your love into that, right? It's like, that's what it seems like. You're loving yourself to go further or do what you want to do. That's what I'm getting. Is that true?
There's this other part I want to say, and I feel like we mentioned it in the form of contracting what you need to contract and relaxing everything else. We mentioned it in the form of connecting to your strength and connecting to your power in the form of a third chakra. I think right now a bunch of different conversations are converging. Listen, a lot of people are really afraid of, in this case, I'm going to call it those postures. Like literally, sometimes someone gets into a back bend and they just freak and they panic and they're afraid. And frequently they're afraid because they don't know what to contract and what to relax. And knowing what to contract connects you to that core of your being where you're connected to your power and connected to your strength. And these are the ways that an asana and pranayama practice, self-cultivation, leads to being able to let go of fear. Like I'm going to go ahead and say that I have, these days now, I have very little fear, like very little fear. You're on mute. I want to hear what you're saying.
I said, that's great. You should, I was just getting rid of the lawnmower behind me, but yeah, no, it's great to say, you don't live in fear. That's a great statement that everyone should put forth and say, and that would change the world.
Now let's bring that into compassion, because there are a lot of people that do live in fear, and you could even most certainly say rightfully so, right? And so therein lies,
yeah,
it's important. It's important for us to be sensitive to all beings with all experiences, and therein lies our responsibility to be the way shower through fear and through pain and into a new way of being, not back to an old way, into a new way. Right. And that comes from, again, like, you know, the knowing in the tissues, from the embodiment, the integration, because remember, we are a frequency of energies that we emit. And so to have that knowing is to emit that knowing that others can attune themselves to and follow suit. Yeah, learn it on the mat and use it in your life.
No, I love everything you're saying. Is there anything else you want to add about the laws of nature, or, but also want you to tell people about your practice and maybe a center retreat place, all that that's happening for you? So, but any words you want to like leave people with to think about and because you,
Yeah, I think I've left a lot of words there for people to think about.
yeah.
I'll tell you what I'm doing and how you can find me. It's super easy. Kim Tang Yoga is my Facebook, is my Instagram, is my YouTube channel, which I haven't quite beefed up yet, but I'm about to load hundreds of hours of content. It's my .com, it's my everything. So Kim Tang Yoga, I'm super easy to find. What I do right now is finally, and thank you in a way, COVID, for creating the space for me to create, because this creation was not because of COVID. It's that I had 10 months of international travel booked, and then because of COVID, it all evaporated. And so now I'm at home with the ability to create. And what I've created is something that I call worldwide sessions. And now I've been able to make my teaching very, very available, very, very affordable around the globe. So my worldwide sessions are geared toward both Europe and Asia and North America, Canada, America, Mexico timelines. I do live online sessions. The recorded videos are available for purchase after the fact. I do private sessions. I do a lot of different things. I facilitate breathwork. I give spiritual counsel. And I didn't actually even mention, I am actually currently head coach for USA Yoga and International Yoga Sports Federation. And so in this way of asana, pranayama, and the path through the self to the self, that was my greatest platform for personal expansion on all of the levels, was through performing on stage. So I'm available on all the levels, and my mission statement in life is to be as generous and available as possible. And so,
Well, you are very generous because you've done your own inner work, and so after we do that, well, there's nothing else except to give back, because we're all an extension of each other, and we're stretching to meet each other. But you know, you look so happy and content, and I don't care how intense you are. No, it's all, well, I think you need that intensity to really go for what you want and have the passion to communicate what you've learned, the essence, the core of you. And it's something which is so great about you, that you've taught yourself, that you've learned through your own inner work, really inner, physically inner work. So thank you for sharing. And, you know, you're also on the lecture circuit. You're also will be at events. Someone actually wrote you were teaching at their yoga center last year. Someone in the chat said that. And so you'll be traveling around and teaching once we get out of this. But I do think there's something you can say that maybe you haven't said yet about the greater wisdom of incarnational being that you somehow you're aware of. Is there anything that comes to you?
definitely. So I can try to make that a one-liner, and
Oh,
or we just do this again sometime and only talk about all the spiritual matters.
okay. Well, tell me then, whatever you want to share. Yeah.
There's a way that I navigate the life with all certainty. And I think that it has to do with what I will call precognitive agreements, which means that my soul is on a journey. And in this incarnation, it's here to learn something specific. And since I've accepted this, I've really done a lot of what I call the work, spiritual work. I've actually crafted spiritual assignments that are exactly like if I was coaching you for asana. I can tell you exactly how to get to your inner world and get in there and unravel the tangles of what you've.
Give me a spiritual assignment. Do you mind?
Well, okay. One of them would be, are we in a hurry, or can I take time with this?
You can take time.
Okay. One of them would be a first one would be what I would call work on thought identification. And, you know, a lot of people are familiar with a concept, and I am going to say that I'm going to call it transcends Western psychology. It's not limited to an 85-year span. It's before this life and after. And it's something that is tangible, functional, and practical for all of us in form. And that is in the form of a meditation that I can, you know, conduct. It's understanding exactly who it is that you think that you are. Now, who it is that you think that you are is a convergence of a lot of different factors. So I could say, for example, if you look at it, if you accept the premise that your soul came here with a precognitive agreement in, I will have the experience of this lesson in this life, and I will choose maybe these parents to introduce a lesson to me, or whoever it is that introduces the lessons. Now, in this meditation, you look at who you think you are first and only by, for example, who your mother taught you that you are.
Right.
And now there's someone that she taught you that you are by who she was. Who she was as a woman, as a wife, as a mother and a lover, what she thought her value was, whether it's in the home or in the workplace, what she was afraid of, what limitations had she agreed to, what agreements did she make that were based in fear, and how did she impart those to you? What did she teach you that it means to be in relationship with others?
Right.
And what did she tell you directly that you are, right?
Those things have already helped me to contemplate that. What your parents in general teach you about how to be a person in the world is something that is formatted to your hard drive in a sense, and then you act out unconsciously, and until someone asks you that question, what did they teach you and how can you maybe go beyond that or transcend it? Yeah.
What I believe, and if we're getting into a spiritual context, and you've told me that we don't have any time constraints, and so
I do have to check on the people that are here, but do you mind just talking about your spiritual concepts, and I'll be right back. Go ahead, keep talking.
sure, put me on speaker and I'll go to town.
You're on.
So speaker view. So I believe that we are vibrational beings in a vibrational world, and you think that you are kind of contained within this housing of muscle material and fascia, but in fact, this is a vibrational space that I exist in. Egoic identification of self as separate by a compilation of thoughts of who I think I am. So I'm density of a thought combination of who I think I am. And that is the place from which I project and, by the way, perceive. And then you think that you are separate. You're a vibrational being with your combination of thought identification, who you think that you are. But in fact, I am vibration with density of thought identification and some energies of masculine and feminine. And then you are a density of vibration of thought identification with some energies of masculine and feminine. And then I'm playing out my relationship with myself in the context of my life, as are you. And so that is a big talking point for a lot of healing. And a lot of I think that ultimately the lessons are introduced to us by our parents. And there are aspects of ourself that are kind of shattered, like if you shatter glass and it spreads into shards. And then our job is to kind of regather the shards of ourselves that we've rejected in the form of, I told you that I had this essence of intensity that I myself was rejecting. And I came to accept myself. Oh my goodness. And now we have a really big, important and valuable conversation, by the way, of the chakras, which are the energies that dwell within the body, which is your answer about how did Asana teach me all that? So, because remember, the path of spirit is through the spine, and the chakras and the energy centers reside in the spine. So now we get into what I'm going to call like qualities of being, and not just human being, because being before this life and after. So there's a talk that I like to give that I call Chakra Diagnostics. Oh, did I lose you?
No, I was just saying I love all that. Oh, you just froze for a second.
Yeah.
Oh no. Hello.
I got you. I'm here. Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, good. No, I love that. I think we should do a whole separate program just about your spiritual teachings, though.
Let's do it.
I loved everything you were saying, because we've seen the groundingness of that. But what you were going to finish a thought there? Sorry, what were you going to say?
I think that if I were to give a closing thought, and it's not even necessarily in conclusion, it's just one last idea I'd like to throw out there.
Yeah.
It's that the realization that I came to in my life through my practice is that I think the highest ideal we can have for ourselves is to be fully connected to the truth of who we are in our deepest authenticity and be fully expressed on every level of that through our being, and then to be loved for exactly the truth of who we are. That actually is what I have learned from a yoga practice. And it's what I want for everyone else as well.
I like that, but I don't know what you mean by the truth of who we are. I'm not sure what that actually means.
Your essence,
Right.
your nature, and your path. Once
Mhm.
you can really connect to that with immaculate clarity, then you can really be deliberate about being in service to others.
Right. And you found your path. And now when you found the path, that's your life is now in service to others because so you're when everything cuts back to starting up and going out, you have a yoga studio that you teach at or
Alan, I wanted to say something about what you just said. You
yeah,
said when you connect to your truth and find your path, then you are in service to others.
yes,
Yes, which I would add,
yes.
my being
Mhm.
is my service to others, right?
Yes, I like
Yeah.
that. Yes, because you
Yeah.
are in that alignment of all of that. So
So
it's
in other words, I can be in service to others, whether or not I'm teaching postures. I can be in service to others no matter what I'm doing. It's no longer a level of action. It's a service is a level of being.
mm,
And it's a frequency. And by the way, that's the way we started our conversation. And so now we've come full circle. You said, "What is yoga?" I said, "It is a state of being."
mm.
And here we are. My state of being is my service.
But you also have a personal life that where stuff still comes up, right? I mean,
Oh, of course. Yeah, but I know how to navigate that contrast. I realize that everything I see is the indication of what's active within me. And so then I can be more deliberate about what is my lesson. Um, how will I perceive myself in this context, and what will my contribution be? I can be deliberate about my contribution because I know too much not to. I know too much about energy to not be responsible for my contribution. And so that's another way that we're in service, right?
but I do see you really love teaching. I really see like how you come alive and a bigger piece of you comes out when you're there assisting people with the totality of what you are. That's a real teacher because you've learned it and now you're communicating it. So thank you, Kim, for your time. And it was like a yoga lesson for me, just watching you in those poses, but also describing the mechanics of it, I think are something I haven't thought of before. You know, I I like exercise. I mean, that's as close as I can relate. And you know, I swam 50 laps the other day in the pool, and that was a push. And you know, I enjoy embodiment, and I think we're here to be kind to this child we have, which is our body. We have to treat it right. And you know, the two things that I've learned to do: when you're hungry, you eat; when you're tired, you sleep. Let's honor that. Let's start there. That's yoga for me. You know?
It's a
And
treatment. Perfect.
yes, yes. But no, you are you've really taken the whole thing to another level. And let's maybe we'll do a panel discussion with other people coming from mastery and other aspects and just see how in a way it's all the same, you know?
Extraordinary. Yeah, I would
Right.
love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm also interested in the energies, the higher kundalini energies, or whatever you want to call those spiritual energies, and what you're channeling through you as well.
Yeah.
So Kim Tang Yoga. That's all you need to know. KIMTANG Yoga, YOGA. And then people find you and they will, you do a private Zoom session with someone? Are you
I
doing that?
do it all the time. Yeah, I do it all the time.
Great. For really advanced yogis and
Wait a minute. For
yeah.
anyone and everyone, you do not have to be advanced at all. Yeah, a good teacher can take you from broken, scared, stiff, calcified, pain, fear, start you exactly where you're at. Just because of Yeah, that's a misconception right there. Just because I have a deep practice doesn't mean my teaching is only suitable for deep practitioners. It's for anyone and everyone.
You're not bored teaching a beginner? Is
My
it the,
goodness, no.
is it
What
the
an opportunity. Did you ever hear that story?
time? Tell me.
So there's a student that goes to a guru in India, and he says to the guru, "I'm very advanced. Please, will you take me?" And the guru says, "Yes, but it'll be $10,000. And he says, "What? $10,000? I'm so advanced." He says, "Yes, there's much unlearning to be done."
Oh, yeah.
So it's actually so much better to start from the scratch. Yeah, I don't mean so much better. I just mean what a rare opportunity to be able to start from the scratch at the beginning, because it all begins at the beginning, even and especially for, advanced practitioners.
No, I
So,
know. I was in India. I was studying with a student. Oh, no, Desikacharya. Is he the one who
sure.
brought? And his son was, what was his son? Anyway, his son had
I
some
know.
students and they were teaching yoga. And they said, really, just raise your arm like this. This is all you're going to do for your yoga session. I forgot what they were in. They were outside of Chennai, I think, somewhere down there. Two very famous yoga teachers and from that whole lineage. And it was so simple practice. And yes, I just learned it. I mean, I didn't get very far, but that's all I started, was such a simple practice. And I guess everything is yoga, just like a baby looking at its hand or learning to go to the bathroom. It's yoga in a way.
Any mindful act, right? Mindful movement with breath. Everything is a meditation. Everything in life is your meditation. Anything done mindfully is,
Mm,
yeah.
right. No, I'm really happy to talk to you because I can see it consumes every moment for you,
Definitely.
because you've had to have spent a lot of time in the practice to get to where you've gotten to, and you learn things about yourself, maybe some you don't like to look at and some you do, and then you clear it. So that's what happens on the mat, is what really goes on, right? That's what you're
Loving
saying.
yourself, even though I feel this way, even though I feel this way, even though I feel this way.
Right. Thank you, Kim, for spending time here and being a part of New Realities, because I got some great comments here of how, you've really opened people up to a whole other way of understanding yoga. So be in touch.
I will. Yeah.
Use this. You can feel free to use this interview any way you want. And
Thank you.
thanks. This is Alan Steinfeld for New Realities with my friend Kim Tang and Kim Tang Yoga. And yeah, maybe I'll take a class with you sometime.
Oh, incredible. Yeah. You and I will do
Well,
yin. We'll do yin,
yeah,
which is a
yeah.
whole nother conversation. Yeah. Next time. Next time. I hope there are many more.
What is the yin?
We'll save it for
Talk
next
about-
time.
Okay, we'll do it. Okay, next time. Thanks. See you later. This is Alan Seinfeld for New Realities. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and thank you for watching. Bye. Thanks. Oh, and